everything you need to know about To Kill a Mockingbird chapter 29. As you've read, chapter 29 is really short, but it fills in some question about the events from chapter 28 and also has a big reveal. The room is shocked by Tate's revelation that Bob Ewell is stabbed dead under the oak tree. Scout remembers that Bob Ewell said that he'd get Atticus if it took the rest of his life, and realizes that he almost did, and it was the last thing that Bob Ewell ended up doing. Atticus asks if he's sure, and the sheriff says that he is, and that Bob won't hurt the kids again. Aunt Alexandra suggests they go to the living room, but Tate wants to look at Jem's injuries while Scout tells them about what happened. Aunt Alexandra says she's going to her room, but before she leaves, she said she had a bad feeling about the night, so that it's her fault. She hadn't acted on her feelings. The sheriff stops her, saying he knows it's a shock, but that people can't follow every feeling that they have. He then turns to Scout and begins to ask details, if she saw Bob Ewell coming after them and what happened. Scout goes to Atticus and tells the story from his lap. Atticus asks her to lift her head so they can hear her. She retells the details she remembers, how they were walking back, heard noises, and thought it was Cecil Jacobs, so they yelled. The sheriff asks Atticus if he heard them yell, but Atticus says both he and Aunt Alexandra had their radios on in their rooms. Remember, there was no television yet, so people listened to the radio in the evening for entertainment. When Tate asks if maybe neighbors heard, Atticus says he doubts it, as they either go to bed early or listen to the radio as well. Scout continues that they both could hear the footsteps that were following them. Jem could see her because of the shiny paint on her costume, but they could see little else. Atticus described Scout's role and the costume so that Tate would understand what they were talking about, and that her costume was totally crushed when she came in. Tate says Bob Ewell's sleeves had holes punched in them and a couple puncture marks in his arms, and so that kind of explains that, and asks Atticus if he could go grab the costume. When Tate takes a look at it, he comments that it probably saved Scout's life, showing them a shiny line across the wire indicative of a knife scraping over it. Atticus comments that Bob Ewell must have been out of his mind, but the sheriff says that Bob wasn't crazy, just a horrible person with enough alcohol to give him the courage to kill children, as he wouldn't confront Atticus to his face. Atticus can't comprehend how someone could do that, but the sheriff tells him that some people aren't even worth the bullets that you need to shoot them. Atticus thought Bob had either got it out of his system or would come after Atticus himself, but recounts Bob's harassment of Helen, an innocent woman, and his breaking into the judge's house when he thought no one was home, and that this makes sense for a person like Bob Ewell. He asks Scout to continue the story, saying she says she was knocked down, heard fighting near the tree, that Jem was grabbing her and then screaming when he was pulled back. She realizes when telling it that it was then that Jem's arm was broken. She tells them that Jem hollered and then she didn't hear him, but that she guesses Bob Ewell was squeezing her hard and then somebody yanked Bob Ewell down. She assumes Jem got up, but that's all she knew. Asks her to go on, and she says someone was staggering and coughing, but it didn't sound like Jem. She thought that maybe Atticus had shown up. The sheriff asks who it was, and she says, "There he is. He can tell you his name." She points to the man against the wall. As narrator, she then describes him. He has super white hands and skin, thin cheeks, gray eyes, and feathery light hair. He gives Scout a shy smile, and through her tears, she greets him by saying, "Hey, boo." So what are we to take from this chapter? Well, we get answers to a few questions, but we also have other questions that come up. Like the last chapter, this one was also heavy on retelling of the events without much reflection. We have confirmation that Bob Ewell is dead. Scout recounts her version of the story, and through her telling, we see how serious of a situation it really was, as there are knife marks on the costume. Bob Ewell was trying to kill them. Jem's injury is bad enough, but without the costume, it is questionable that Scout would have even survived. It becomes clear that what exactly happened is not clear to Scout herself. She doesn't really know who was doing what, and she thinks maybe that Jem was up again after his arm had been broken. But someone else had carried Jem home. We find out that the unknown man against the wall is none other than Boo Radley. These two characters had been brought up in chapters 25 and 26, and now they both appear in chapters 27 and 28. Scout's dream of meeting her neighbor has come true, but not the way she thought. Any questions? You can put them in the comment box below.